All right, Fitwell fans and members, I've got Vanessa Leone back again to share some of her wisdom and her story. It's always fascinating. I love learning from you, and you've got a lot to give. You've been in the industry for such a long time. Just for those who don't know much about you, can you share more on your story? I think let's start with
Thanks, Tarek. Hopefully, it doesn't show that I've been in the industry for that long.
that.
Um, I'm pretty fortunate that I have been involved in exercise pretty much my entire life. I was brought up in a family where we had a lot of exercise always growing up, and I actually started coaching girls dancing and aerobics. If you've ever done aerobics at high school, you'll know what I'm talking about. When I was about 16. So I've literally been doing it for half of my life. So that was the starting point for me. And then I did my exercise science degree as soon as I finished university. I am a self-professed science geek and I qualified for an honours scholarship. So I started doing that after I worked in elite sport for about a year and a half as well through that degree. Um, and I absolutely hated my honours research. I couldn't think of anything more boring to do ever in my entire life. Sorry for all the researchers out there. So I quit that and then tried to figure out my place in the industry, which was, I think, a little bit challenging back then. Like, I had this mindset where I was too qualified to become a personal trainer, and I didn't think that that was the right career path for me. So I dabbled in a few other bits and pieces and hated it, and took a job with it. I absolutely loved it. Realized I was not only not overqualified, but completely overwhelmed by the amount of information that you can possibly learn about the human body and what training people entails. And straight into that, I started teaching group exercise as well. So this is well within now probably 13 years ago. And I've just, yeah, I loved it. I loved every aspect of it. I loved how group exercise, you could change the feeling of the room, you could really give you energy, how you could meet a whole bunch of people. And for me, group exercise was a constant stream of referrals for personal training. So that was also really, really great for me. I'd teach a couple of classes and I'd never be short of personal training. I ran small group classes out of my big box gym through my group exercise as well. So I had not only one-on-ones, but I had small groups, which were really profitable and really, really fun also. And then I got lucky enough to be involved with several different education companies. And I've been all over Australia and New Zealand teaching a lot of different content and equipment pieces for different companies, as well as Cert 3, Cert 4, a whole bunch of CEC courses. And yeah, if there's a topic, a personal training or a group exercise topic, I think I've studied it and I've done the course and I might have even taught it.
There you go. That's a rich vein of experience. In particular, I wanted to ask you how group instructing, group exercises evolved. You've been, at it for, let's say, 13 years. Can you talk more on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when I started, Les Mills was really still quite influential. It was very big. It had almost pushed all freestyle instructors to a very, very small minimum of amount of people. And yoga and Pilates were really coming mainstream. We're really starting to enter what people wanted to do as a day-to-day thing, not just I'm a bit hippie and I want to try yoga, or my physio told me to do Pilates. Now it was just coming into that. And I did a little bit of the pre-choreographed stuff and I enjoyed it, but it was really time consuming for me. Having to learn choreography and buy the music and all that kind of stuff. So I really, really enjoyed freestyle classes that I got to create the programming for. Virgin Active, where I used to work, were really great and allowed me to teach a whole bunch that I had created, most of which were successful, some were not. I used to have a hula hooping class. That one was very entertaining, but not the most successful venture. And I think it's now shifted back again from pre-choreographed to almost freestyle and very heavily influenced with HIIT and strength and conditioning. And it's almost like completely separate. If you do Pilates or you do yoga or you do like HIIT. And I almost find that there's nothing in between anymore. Everything in between has really been pushed out to sort of like your suburban gyms, and it's not in vogue to do a Zumba class or to teach aqua or something like that, when I think that a more holistic approach to group exercise should be the next step from us all, and particularly from me from a programming perspective, that those are the big shifts that I've seen is lots of classes work you very hard, very high intensity based. I'm not even going to say interval because I won't go into that discussion today. And if you want to do wellness, you end up in a Pilates or a yoga class. So it's an interesting evolution for sure.
Yeah, it certainly is. And we're seeing that sort of this delineation of different services that I suppose when you're getting to become a personal trainer, like oftentimes it was distinguished, right? Like you're either PT or a group X, right? So now that those waters are a little bit more sort of muddied, like can you talk a little bit more about the evolution, like so that a PT sort of isn't averse to group training and vice versa?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think a lot of PTs are still hesitant to call themselves group exercise instructors because there's, I don't know if stigma is the right word. There's a feeling that group exercise instructors don't know what they're doing or something like that, which is false. But as a personal trainer, developing the skills to be able to teach in front of a classroom, they're not taught in personal training certifications. And unless you as a PT have an inclination to want to do it, I don't think that there are a lot of PTs who are great instructors for groups. Whereas on the flip side, if you're a group exercise instructor, you enjoy the feeling of teaching in a group. You want to be there. You're great at leading a class. You have a lot of charisma and personality to be able to influence a big room of people. But there's not necessarily the education pathway or the career pathway for someone who teaches group exercise, or solely group exercise, which I find really frustrating about the industry, because I don't actually think they're separate. Throughout my entire career, one has benefited the other in such a complementary way the whole way through. I wouldn't call myself more one than the other. And the skills that you learn from both, they help this all-encompassing kind of health and fitness realm that we tend to be in. And you can still niche yourself down into one-on-ones or a certain style or a specific thing. But, I see a lot of personal trainers move into group exercise because it ends up being more bang for your buck. You can have 20 people in a room instead of one-on-one, and you work less hours. So the idea of it is better, but then they're still programming like they have a one-on-one person, or that it's just a big workout of the day. The actual class flow hasn't been well thought out, and they might not necessarily be the most engaging while they're teaching their classes because they've never learnt those skills. And they are skills. They're skills that you have to develop.
Yeah, I mean, you and Emma certainly are the thought leaders, beyond thought leaders in this space, and tell us more on the sort of, I suppose, pillars that make up a good group instructor, and then the second part of that question, the pathway that someone can take, that solution to that nagging problem.
Yeah, cool, good question. So we found two really fundamental ones that are key for anybody, regardless of where you're at in the industry. You might not have done a Cert 3, Cert 4, you might have been 10, 15 years already in the industry. But the first two fundamental pillars for us are cuing and coaching. And cuing is our deep dive look into how you deliver your message. You can see me right now, like I'm a big hand gesture person. That is the group exercise instructor in me, because you make everything bigger and better so that you can be seen in front of a room. And I also overcompensate because I'm like 5 foot nothing. So, but those are the skills that we go through. And then the coaching aspect is like we take a little bit from personal training and inject it into group exercise instructors. How do you say the same thing, but don't repeat yourself? How do you make it interesting? How do you coach to every single individual who comes to your class and make it relevant for them? And I think that they're fundamental skills. If you're a personal trainer and you want to just go into workshops, you don't necessarily want to teach group exercise. I think that any public speaking area where you want to fall into, those two pillars are incredible. And then the other two pillars specifically for group exercise, we have music and programming. So again, you can kind of take one or the other, although Emma would definitely say that you can't leave music, and I would probably agree with her, is that you definitely want to have some kind of atmosphere and immersion in music within your group exercise classes. It fundamentally changes the experience, usually for the better, unless you haven't done it very well. And obviously my brainchild is programming. So if you're someone who is going to program your own classes, or you want to understand the science of it a little bit better, the programming side of it really ties in really well with cueing and how you can cue and program really well together. Those are the 4 pillars, and it's really exciting. Our course is coming out in February next year. So keep an eye to the ground, follow us along socials, and we will have this direct pathway for any personal trainer, group exercise instructor, regardless of your level, to be able to really level up and find a proper career if you want to make one of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You've certainly nutted out the solutions, and I know that quite well myself. Having known both you and Emma for some time and seeing the gold that you deliver, and certainly that gold is delivered on the Fitwell platform. So for those of you who aren't yet members, you're obviously knowing Vanessa more and more, and certainly we'll continue to have Vanessa deliver some more gold on these webinars. So perhaps next up, we could do a more of a deep dive into your program. Do you want to just briefly explain that, and perhaps we can do a larger webinar down the track?
Yeah, cool. I've done a couple of specific programming talks for, if you run your own business, or if you've got a studio or a facility yourself, you can make it quite a lot more specific to the actual facility. But as an overarching pillar, group exercise programming is not considered in Cert 3 and Cert 4. So when you're looking at things like the flow of the room, how to utilize your equipment best, where you stand in that, using timers, what are really good work to rest ratios, and how do you actually put together a class from start to finish and make it interesting, executable, and repeatable every single time you teach it, that also gets your members results. Because I think that quite often group exercise is placed in a little corner as like, oh, people just kind of run around in a circle and they do it for fun. It doesn't bring you the results that you're looking for. And I beg to differ. I think that group exercise has the power to wholly transform the industry because of the way that you're allowed to connect in a group. And humans are designed to connect in groups. It's what we're fundamentally biologically driven to do. And if you can create really effective programming, you can have such a dramatic impact on someone's livelihood, their mood, their body, absolutely everything. And when you understand the fundamentals of obviously, your work to rests and what you're doing, your reps, your sets, but how to plan that well, you can take it to yoga, you can use it for Pilates, you can use it for boxing, you can use it for HIIT, you can use it for strength, you can use it across anything. Because what they don't teach you in yoga is how many reps and sets are you actually working when you're putting together your structure? And what about in Pilates? What type of muscle contractions are most prevalent, and how are they really going to affect what's happening within your clientele and what they're doing? Um, Yet, PTs, we're taught that, but then for some reason when we put it into a group setting, it kind of all goes out the window because you, it's really easy to make something hard, but it's really hard to make something extremely effective for the amount of variability of people that you have in that space. And I really want to create effectiveness and success for trainers so that they can bring that onto their clients now and ongoing.
Yeah, as I say, like simplicity is the art of sophistication, right? So to that end, you've sort of had over the years thought about what the industry needs, and definitely group instructing, but through experience is something that now is available. So we're looking forward to learning more about you, and certainly this program. We'll get you back on for a programming webinar, but in the meantime, you've learned a thing or two about Vanessa and her zone of genius. So thank you for your time, and that we're really honoured to have you as a Fitwell presenter.
I'm so glad to be a part of it. It's awesome. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.